Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison LaGrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison LaGrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Israeli strikes kill 19 in the last 24 hours, as per Gaza officials, even as mediators say significant progress made toward a ceasefire and hostage release deal. Russia says it captured a settlement near the key city of Pokrovsk in the country's east. Russian troops reached the outskirts of the city, home to one of Ukraine's most important coal mines. Nigerian Army's airstrike in northwest Zamfara state kills at least 16 civilians accidentally, marking the second such incident of military error in a month in the West African nation. A nationwide strike in protest against possible pension reforms cripples air and rail traffic in Belgium. Almost half of all flights at Brussels airport cancelled. Many schools have been shut. And millions of Hindu devotees from all across India flock to the northern city of Prayagraj to kickstart the Mahakumbh festival, touted as the world's largest religious gathering. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from the Horn of Africa. Neighbours Ethiopia and Somalia, who had cut ties over a port deal that caused a year-long dispute, have now agreed to restore full diplomatic relations. Over the weekend, Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud had made an unexpected visit to Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, and he met with the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Now, the leaders committed to restore and enhance bilateral ties through full diplomatic representation in their respective capitals. They also vowed to expand infrastructure linkages to boost trade and investment. Some Ethiopian officials also described the visit by the Somali leader as a boost to their brotherly relations. However, this latest peace push comes after months of threats and tensions. Ties between the two Horn of Africa nations deteriorated after Ethiopia last year signed a deal with Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland. Somaliland seeks independence from Somalia, but no country so far backs its claims. But Ethiopia agreed to do so as it signed a deal with the territory. As a part of that agreement, the landlocked country would gain access to Somaliland's port and also permission to build a naval facility along its coastline. In exchange, it would recognize Somaliland as a separate nation. However, the deal provoked a fierce response from Somalia, which accused its larger neighbor of attempting to annex its territory and launching an attack on its sovereignty. It then expelled the Ethiopian ambassador in Mogadishu and recalled its representative in Addis Ababa. Since then, Somalia's close ally Turkey had worked to ease tensions. It has mediated talks between the two neighbors, which culminated in the Ankara Declaration brokered by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan last month. Somalia's president and Ethiopia's prime minister had then pledged to resolve their differences. The year-long diplomatic standoff also risked undermining security cooperation between Somalia and Ethiopia in their fight against Al-Shabaab. the Al-Qaeda affiliate that seeks to overthrow Somali government. Now, amid the rift, Somalia announced plans to expel Ethiopia from a UN-backed peacekeeping mission fighting the group, in which Ethiopian troops play a significant role. But now it says that the obstacles to Ethiopia's participation in the new mission have been overcome, and the final stage of the composition and size of Ethiopian forces is expected to be sorted out shortly. So while Turkish-led talks have seemingly resulted in success, some impediments have also come to light. Just days after Mogadishu and Addis Ababa signed the Ankara Declaration, their troops engaged in a deadly clash. Somalia accused the Ethiopian forces of attacking its troops in a border region, highlighting that bilateral tensions are not yet solved. Then some foreign partners could also derail the talks. For example, Egypt. A rival of Ethiopia has now forged closer ties with Somalia, while the Somali president made the abrupt visit to Ethiopia over the weekend. The country's foreign minister attended a meeting in Cairo with Eritrea and Egypt. Now, both of these nations have troubled relations with Ethiopia and have forged an alliance to counter it. The Egyptian minister declared that it will not accept any military or naval presence in the Red Sea from non-bordering countries, and these comments are seen as a reference to landlocked Ethiopia, which is trying to gain sea access through Somalia. So, will ties with Egypt create trouble for Somalia-Ethiopia rapprochement? Or is it really the end of the ongoing dispute in the Horn of Africa region? Now, for more on this, we have with us Matt Brien, a strategic advisor at Hassan Research, who is joining us live from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I think you've done
Now,
an
Matt, what are the
excellent
key
job.
factors that led to Ethiopia and Somalia to resolve their year-long dispute over Ethiopia's port deal with Somaliland? And furthermore, what compromises were made by both sides?
Well, first, I think you've done an excellent job of laying out the challenges, the multifarious, diverse interests and actors in this equation, which makes it so complicated. But in response directly to your question, what's been agreed is, I think it's a very welcome step. It represents diplomatic rapprochement between the two countries. And importantly, I think it represents a change of tone, where Somalia and Ethiopia are no longer accusing each other of various hostile and adversarial acts. But I think we have to be really cautious about the substance and whether politically and anything has really been agreed. Fundamentally, Ethiopia has made no major concessions. It hasn't withdrawn the memorandum of understanding with Somaliland, and it is still clearly a strategic objective of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government to have commercial and military access to the sea, and particularly the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden.
Yeah.
On the Somali side, Somalia has not yet actually consented to Ethiopian troops remaining as part of the African Union peacekeeping mission there. In principle, Somalia has said that it's willing to do so, but it says, technically speaking, all of the slots for peacekeepers have now been filled, and it's very difficult to accommodate Ethiopia's presence of more than 3,000 troops under the mission's umbrella. And so basically, we are where we started before the Ankara Declaration, mediated by Turkey. And the two sides remain very far apart in the implementation of this statement of principle and intent to improve their relations.
Right. And how will the restoration of full diplomatic ties between Ethiopia and Somalia impact the stability and the economic development of the Horn of Africa region, especially in the context of Somaliland status?
Well, the restoration of full diplomatic ties, I think we need to decode that somewhat. Really, what it means is that Somalia will restore its ambassador to Addis Ababa, and Ethiopia will be permitted to send its ambassador back to Mogadishu. It also means that Ethiopia will be permitted to reopen its consulates in Garowe, in the northern Somali province of Puntland, and in Somaliland's capital, Hargeisa. Now, these so-called consulates never closed, despite the federal government of Somalia's orders that they should do so. So nothing really changes there. Again, it's a de-escalation of the hostilities at a diplomatic level. And that's a welcome thing. And it opens the door to more concrete understandings. But if we look fundamentally at what it means for the region, Ethiopia seems to be still committed to the MOU, the memorandum with Somaliland, which it hasn't withdrawn. And that is going to be the prime point of contention between Addis Ababa and Mogadishu. There's also the issue of Ethiopian troops in Somalia, which you referred to, and clashes with Somali government forces. That's of a lesser order, but it's still something that's going to need to be addressed if these two countries are going to see eye to eye.
Right, Matt, thank you so much for being with us on Firstpost Africa, for your valued analysis and insights there.
Thank you.
For our next story, let's shift focus to North Africa. The war in Sudan is intensifying day by day, and in the latest, the country's army has given a major blow to the rebel paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Sudan's army has taken back control of a strategic city in the east, which was under the grip of the Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, for over a year. The army and its allies have recaptured Wad Madani, the capital city of the Algeria state. Located in the center of the country and south of Sudan's capital, Khartoum, the city is a strategic crossroads of key supply highways linking several states in Sudan. In a statement, the army, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, congratulated the citizens, saying it had freed prisoners in the city, and added that they were working to clean up the remaining rebel pockets inside the city. In a video posted by the army on social media, Sudanese troops could be seen inside the Wad Madani city, which has been under the RSF's control since December of 2023.
Today is January 11th, 2025. We are now inside the city of Madani. We told you, Janjaweed, you will not be able to do this. You ran away like women. This is the street that takes you to the market. And this is Nile Street. We salute our brother staff commander Abdul Bakietra. Madani is free. God is great.
Visuals from Wad Madani and other cities across Sudan showed that citizens and members of the Sudanese armed forces were celebrating on the streets post the recapture of the city.
Those people exhausted us in Madani. They looted our belongings and warehouses. They break into the houses, and in case they find nothing at certain people, they beat them. We left our sons at homes. We the women would go out to get food and drinks. We bring stuff to our brothers to eat with us at home. The Janjaweed left us with nothing.
Safety is restored, thank God, with the control of the armed forces and all its allies inside Algeria state. We are talking to you from inside Madani. We tell any person, thank God, that this city is safe, people can go back to their homes. They can come safely, thank God.
Mohamud Hamdan Dagalo, the head of the RSF, accepted the defeat of his paramilitary force and said it had lost control of the key Algeria city. However, he added that the RSF, which is accused of committing genocide on citizens, would reclaim the city soon. Reports suggest that the RSF leader, also known as Ahmed, has attributed the defeat to what he described as the Sudanese army's reliance on Iranian drones and fighters from Ethiopia's Tigray region. Now, Sudan has been grappling with a deadly civil war since mid-April 2023. A power struggle has erupted between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary RSF, who have been vying for control over the territory. The conflict has led to over 28,000 lives reportedly being lost. The fighting has created one of the world's largest humanitarian crises, with over 12 million people being displaced and parts of the country seeing extreme hunger or famine. The crisis has also led to over 3 million people fleeing across the Sudanese border. In recent months, the army, which has also been accused of war crimes, has stepped up its efforts to regain the control of major parts of the country, giving major blows to the RSF, which previously had the upper hand. The RSF has lost control of many areas in Khartoum, the capital sister city of Omdurman, and the eastern and central provinces. Over the last few months, the army has also increased its efforts to regain control of Algeria state, which has seen some of the RSF's bloodiest attacks on civilians, as well as the burning of fields, looting of hospitals and markets, and flooding of irrigation ditches. So a victory in Algeria would be the army's biggest breakthrough since it seized control of the capital's twin city of Omdurman nearly a year ago. But for now, the RSF still retains control of most of Algeria state, and this as well as nearly all of Sudan's western Darfur region and large parts of the country's south. On the other hand, the army controls the north and the east of the country, as well as parts of the capital. But with this latest blow to the RSF in Algeria state, it remains to be seen whether the warring parties would now finally come to the negotiating table and end the crisis, or continue to fight and worsen the situation for millions of people in Sudan. Now, relations between Algeria and its former colonial power France have hit a new low. The North African country has accused France of launching a disinformation campaign against it. Algiers has also accused Paris of a diplomatic escalation against the country through statements by French officials. In a statement, Algeria accused the extreme right in France of orchestrating a campaign of disinformation against Algiers, and said that it was in no way engaged in a logic of escalation, provocation, or humiliation against France. The accusations from the North African country were in response to an allegation by the French Interior Minister against Algeria, and saying that Algiers was seeking to humiliate Paris for its refusal to receive an Algerian social media influencer known as Doualem, who was arrested by French authorities after posting a controversial video on TikTok.
La France ne peut pas supporter cette situation.
We cannot. France cannot tolerate this situation. And I think that, while keeping our cool, but our determination to defend our interests, we must now assess all the means available to us, and I mean all the means available to us with regard to Algeria. He had an up-to-date biometric passport, so he was deported. I issued a deportation order, and the Algerian authorities refused to let him land on Algerian soil, in total breach of the rules.
Now, 59-year-old Doualem was arrested in France earlier in January over violent comments targeting an Algerian activist opposed to the government in Algiers. He was deported to Algeria last week, but was sent back to France the same evening as Algiers refused to let the influencer enter. Defending its move to return the influencer to Paris, Algeria said that the decision was motivated by the desire to allow Doualem to respond to the accusations brought against him and to defend himself before the French judiciary. Algiers further noted that Paris did not notify relevant Algerian authorities about the influencer concerning his arrest or even a decision to deport him, which was in violation of a consular agreement between the two countries in 1974. But the influencer's return was not well received in Paris. Now, France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot has reportedly threatened restrictions to visas or development aid and said that France would have no option but to retaliate if the Algerians continued to escalate the row. Now, tensions have been high between Algeria and France in recent months, and the source of the conflict is the dispute over Western Sahara. Western Sahara is a former Spanish colony, but is now mostly under the de facto control of Morocco. However, the territory is claimed by the Sahrawi separatists of the Polisario Front, who are demanding a self-determination referendum. The separatists are supported by Algeria. In a major policy shift, French President Emmanuel Macron supported Morocco's claim over Western Sahara region last year. This triggered a diplomatic row between the two countries, with Algeria deciding to withdraw its ambassador from Paris last year. The relations have further soured after several Algerian social media influencers have been detained in recent days in France over accusations of terrorism and inciting violence. Last year, in November, Algeria also detained a well-known French-Algerian writer, Boualem Sansal, on national security charges. The diplomatic row is only intensifying with this back and forth between Paris and Algiers. But can France afford to lose another former colony as an ally, especially at a time when it is dramatically losing its footing in Africa? And for our last story today, we talk about an internet problem in Africa that has turned out badly for its economy. As per a new report, Africa lost over $1.5 billion in 2024 due to government-imposed internet shutdowns and social media bans. This figure is around 20% of the total economic loss due to digital outages worldwide. From conflicts to protests and political tensions, nations across Africa imposed internet restrictions. Which are these nations and how badly did it impact their economy? Our next report gets you all the details.
The internet is the lifeblood of the modern world. It connects over 5.5 billion users who have access to a plethora of opportunities online, making their lives easier. But what if the internet suddenly disappeared? One wouldn't just lose out on the latest trends and buzz, but a digital outage has some devastating consequences. Today, businesses worldwide rely on the internet. Key services like healthcare and education depend on it. So an internet blackout would not just disrupt key operations, but also cost billions of dollars, probably by the second. 2024 witnessed several such outages. Some occurred due to technical glitches, but some were imposed deliberately by the governments to restrict internet freedom in their nations. These restrictions have also hurt nations economically worldwide, including in Africa. Africa lost around $1.56 billion to government-induced shutdowns in the past year. This is according to a new report by 10VPN, an international VPN review website. Africa's loss is 19% of the total $7.69 billion that was lost due to internet shutdowns all around the world. According to the report, there were a total of 28 internet shutdowns across 28 countries in 2024. 12 of these were in African countries. These include Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Algeria, Guinea, Mauritania, Senegal, Mozambique, Chad, Mauritius, Tanzania, and Equatorial Guinea. Sudan is the African country that lost the most due to digital blackout. It lost a whopping $1.12 billion. Total internet shutdowns in the country lasted for more than 12,707 hours. That's over 529 days. These shutdowns in the country were imposed mainly due to a prolonged conflict. Sudan has been reeling from an almost 2-year-long civil war between the army and the paramilitary forces. Both sides have used network disruptions to control information flows in areas held by the opposing faction. But the restrictions have worsened the suffering of millions. cutting them off from assistance when they need it the most. While the conflicts continued throughout the year, 2024 was also a year of protests in Africa. During violence and chaos, the government imposed restrictions on the internet, which was used as a tool to mobilize rallies. For example, in Kenya, where young people were on a march against the Ruto government, the East African nation lost $75 million as it shut the internet in response. Then in Ethiopia, amid an escalation in violence between federal forces and regional militias, mobile internet connectivity was restricted. This cost the Horn of African nation around $211 million. While countries like Ethiopia have imposed such restrictions in the past as well, 2024 saw some African nations imposing them for the very first time. Like the island of Mauritius, which banned all social media platforms ahead of general elections. This was done in the wake of a shocking scandal where secret recordings of phone calls by politicians, journalists, and even foreign diplomats were leaked online. The social media ban sparked widespread outcry from the business community and is also considered one of the reasons the party imposing the ban lost the elections. Election-related troubles also led to internet blackouts in southern Africa's Mozambique, where unrest has been ongoing after the disputed October elections. While nations across Africa imposed internet restrictions, globally, Asia led in terms of internet shutdowns in 2024. The continent lost $4.64 billion, affecting 331.3 million people. This was followed by Africa with $1.5 billion in losses, impacting 111.2 million internet users. Though the global economic impact of internet shutdowns decreased by 16% compared to 2023, the duration of shutdowns increased by 12%. While such shutdowns have huge economic repercussions, they also have human costs. As the internet becomes an integral part of our lives, it is also vital for governments around the world to not impose any restrictions without weighing in the consequences.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.